Hi everyone.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hey folks, morning, afternoon and evening.
Steve.
Hello.
Hi everyone.
Hey Paul.
I just threw in another reminder on Slack that we are starting.
Yes, we'll wait a couple of minutes for more folks to come in. We had quite good numbers yesterday, at the start at least. So, and I guess we're expecting the North Flank folks today, as they specifically asked about the performance and Cocoa interfaces topic. Okay.
Hey.
So, Ildiko, I noticed you had a gathering and agenda fashion, and apologies if I if I overstepped, but I did a few updates and tweaks and
No.
some missing things in, but I don't know if we still want to check that this makes sense. I think everything that was in the proposed list, apart from the late breaking one by Greg, I guess, is
Yep.
is on here. Maybe this can go under lean and mean, Greg. Is that all right?
Guess so.
I just put agenda bashing on here because we didn't fully agree on today's agenda yesterday. So I just want to give us an opportunity to revisit what we wanted to talk about today and in what order. I don't know if we want to couple the CI/CD conversation with performance testing, for example, and those kind of things.
Yeah, so I decoupled those, but maybe
Okay.
that's the wrong thing to do just because I think it's a great topic to have, but I don't necessarily. I know there's a few other interested parties to talk about performance testing, so I figured if CI/CD was a bit later, the performance testing is part of our CI/CD, but I don't necessarily want them to overlap and get muddied. But I'm happy to hear input from others. And any other thoughts on the topics I added? I think the tool chain discussion one hadn't come up, so I added it to tomorrow. Um, but I don't know if there's any. Obviously, if there's someone here who, if there's someone who's not here who really wants to talk about one of these, then they can't tell us. But I guess if there's somebody who can't make it on Thursday who really wants to talk about these, we could maybe shuffle stuff in. But it seems like from yesterday we've got a good set of people who are able to be here to talk about these today.
Yeah, and to be honest, like the tool chain discussion is like partially also related to moving to the restaurant time.
Hmm.
Because if we go to the restaurant time and then like we get blocked on like we need to keep using this old tool chain for this or that, like we're just shooting ourselves in the foot,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, not sure like how we want to do this, but I'm pretty sure that I would like to have focus work on the restaurant time when we have the tool chain discussion.
Yeah, and I think we need it anyway because we've still got the agent as far as Rust development is. I guess it may alleviate the Go version, but yeah. Okay, should we just crack on with the first topic then?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
Oh,
Do you want to introduce it, Ildiko, or do you want me to?
the performance testing one?
Yep.
Go ahead. I'm still gathering my brain.
Okay, no worries. So yeah, just as a little bit of context for people, um, the performance testing in upstream has consisted, I'll have to go back in the past, consisted of some metrics tests. They were primarily worked on by Intel. Um, there was a variety of different tests they did with boot time, network latency tests, a bunch of benchmarks. We don't necessarily know where they came from or all of the motivation. Basically, what happened is the metrics test collect a bunch of stats and then compared them to a kind of a acceptable level, which both checked that they weren't too fast or too slow. We they were running on a runner that was set up by I guess Salvador and Gabby 4 or 5 years ago. After that team no longer was working on Kata upstream, the runner got corrupted. Um, so I got a new machine deployed and reworked the tests to try and get them set up and make them a bit more modern. So they use kata deploy to install rather than manually installing binaries, which was causing a lot of problems. We had a lot of issues with it was separate test jobs and they clashed with each other. There was some successes with this, but there was still something in the tests which caused the container D configuration to get corrupted. So I was able to get with the new changes runs of these that passed, but I had to kind of manually go and clean up the machine each time, which is not great, but is where we were. That there was a development last week around Monday. Something happened to the machine, and something also similar happened to the power, one of the power self-hosted runners that after restarting it, the machine was non-responsive. We have had this in the past where a dodgy PR overwrote the slash user slash bin directory. But the situation we're in at the moment, as you can see, is for the last week, all of the metrics tests are just hanging because the runner is offline. Um, so that's kind of the metrics test. We also have had various discussions in AC meetings. Sorry, I'll get to the right time, about whether they are fit for purpose anyway. There's kind of some discussions that, yeah, we want to be able to get some detect regressions, and we want to be able to collect some benchmarks for particular use cases. The metrics kind of helped us with regressions, but weren't very use case driven. So we've had a little bit of discussion on here, and I guess one of the main thoughts we've had is, as well as needing a bare metal runner so that we can run these more reliably, because if we run them on a kind of virtualized runner, then we might different workloads running on the same physical machine might cause variations. But we also want to enable users to run benchmarks themselves. We don't want to get into I guess for want of a better term, a pissing contest between different hypervisors, different platforms, and stuff like that. Maybe it's unfair. A bit of anecdotal experience of IBM and Oracle doing this around DB2 and databases is they publish metrics, and then one person tweaks the configuration to give slightly better metrics. So then
Yeah, that's
head
the
on
reason we
like,
never publish it, metrics inside Intel. Like,
yes. Exactly. So we don't necessarily want to say here are benchmarks, but we want to, one of the key things I think we want to do is let a user have a good experience with a set of documentation and scripts so that a user can do their own testing and make their own mind up, rather than us having somewhere which says Kata Containers says that runtime RS and Cloud Hypervisor is the fastest setup or something like that. That's my kind of starting point and opening pitch on performance testing. So yeah, but very interested to hear in if others have got a different view on it, or if they think there's other suggestions and ideas we should have on this topic.
do you mind if I start?
Go ahead.
So, I am someone who is not big fond of how the tests were done before. We had some magic numbers that were bumped here and there, and we didn't even were able to keep track of the hardware where it was running. We were not keeping track of why those numbers got better. We didn't keep track of why those numbers got worse. So those tests were running, but then what? Those, in my opinion, that was not exactly a reasonable way to do testing, because what would happen if something just breaks? We would just bump a number and that's it. Of course, we would still take a look at that. So like, oh, it improved a little bit, but we never fully understand why. With that said, myself and Cameron here, we are very interested on some of the performance tests. For us, scalability is something that is quite important. For us, being able to know how, like, deal with how many Kata containers you can spawn on a specific hardware, that's like quite important for us. Being able to know how we do with a specific database, like under full throttle, like writing to the disk and access to the disk, like how do we deal with that? And those are the test cases that we will be pushing inside Northland. With that said, we will be doing this work inside Northland regardless. What we would like to propose here is, and this is not going to be like next week, just to make it super clear, but what I would like to propose here is, by the moment we put our house, we clean up our house and make sure that everything is working on our side, we will start upstreaming these kind of tests. Like you are running, I don't know, Mongo with a thousand entries, and then we want to search for something there. What is the time on that? How do we measure that time with block device, virtual UFS, virtual block, and these kind of things. This is going to take like some serious work in order to be properly done, but I think that's the proper way to do. And then we have examples of what Kata containers can do with some like real use case, real users kind of scenarios, and also then we have more control. I hope that we will have more control because then now I hope that by the moment we rewrite this, we will at least understand what we are doing and then decide on, hey, this PR here is actually breaking this test for one reason. And that's the main point that I would like to bring here. I know that Anastasius and a few other folks are quite interested on having this. I think that performance testing is crucial in order to properly decide on whether we are going to use the Go runtime or the Rust runtime for the future. And here is like myself and Cameron offering help on how we want to see this and how we want to do this. And also asking for help for anyone else who would be interested on taking this kind of approach to join us, and then like we can divide and conquer on this front. And I would like to know like what the folks here think about that.
Marcus, I think you've had a hand before.
I don't have a response for Fabiano, unfortunately, but I just wanted to ask, like so my perspective on so it sounds like these are end-to-end, like the metrics test you showed, these are end-to-end tests for workloads. And there's lots of stuff involved that Kata does not really control, right? So starting from the container runtime, like the CRI to the hypervisor and the Linux kernel in the guest and so on. And I wonder, like, what are we actually measuring, or what is the percentage that Kata is actually responsible for in these measurements? Is that even significant?
So Kata itself, no, but the tools that we use with Kata containers are, right? Because if we choose to use Virtual FSD and then like Virtual FSD is freaking slow for one reason or another, we end up like receiving a lot of penalty on the read writes. So keeping track of the things that we are gluing together, I think it's important, Marcus. I'm not sure if I was able to answer your question.
Yeah, I think so. So it would be, or I would understand the argument if Kata was making the choice for users. But is it really?
We partially do make the choice for the users by the moment we ship a guest kernel or an example of a guest kernel that people can use. We do make the choice for the user by the moment that we are shipping Virtual FSD and having that by default in our configuration.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I
And
guess this is where we want to make some options so that users can try running with Virtual Block versus Virtual FS, stuff like that. So we offer a range of options to work with Kata, and we provide some sort of framework such that they can try a kind of pick a mix and work out what the overall performance is. I think that's where I was trying to get to with this second point.
I remember talking to users who were either running into performance challenges with Vert IOFS or just wanted to know which option would be best to integrate with Kata. So having something available for them to tweak around and figure things out, that would be great. Because the question come up, like, does Kata have benchmarking? Like, do we know the performance numbers?
And
And
Nildiko, just to build on what you were saying, we don't even have a way to tell users, run these and get your own benchmark at this point. which complements what you are saying. So I think that with this effort that I'm proposing here, we will at least provide them the tooling to do so. We will have our own ones, but they will be able to, as you mentioned, tweak here, tweak there, and be able to come up with their own and see like what fits better their own use case.
Are there any other downstream users who are already doing similar performance tests and might be interested in collaborating and upstreaming some of their framework, like the Northflank team are proposing? Because it might be that we have Northflank will give us some example use cases, but it might be that other downstream teams have got other use cases which would be great, and having more use cases is good for the project anyway, because we can explain both how you can use Kata, but also the kind of performance setups. So I wondered if anyone else might want to work on the contribution of use cases, even if not necessarily want to contribute a framework.
Steve, I am not trying to call anyone by name, but I will do that. You may happen to have a friend from IBM who has been using Kata containers like quite heavily.
Yeah.
Can you? I can also check with him, but maybe you can also check with him on whether he would be willing to help with something. Another thing is, again, not trying to call out anyone, but I remember Robert Kravitz together with Christoph, they did like a bunch of those. Not with a framework, it was just like them running standalone testing. And I think Christoph even commented on this PR on inside Red Hat. So getting to know from those folks, even if they are not willing to contribute, at least what are the cases that they would be interested on. That would be a very good thing to put in a document, and from that document start opening issues to figure out like what is the best way to go. Does it make sense?
Yeah, so I can comment on that. I rerun some of these tests recently, and the problem is that I'm comparing mostly upstream and downstream, and the numbers are not really favorable for the downstream version, and so I'm not sure I can reshare what I saw, but maybe I could share my screen and show what it looks like if you're interested.
Christoph, I think that just for the sake of the time, what I would be very interested is, and I'm gonna play Ariel here, okay?
Yeah.
We should get the folks who are interested and start a task force kind of meeting and go through there.
Yeah.
Because then we have focused effort on. So for now, just knowing if there are more people interested on, getting their hands dirty, playing with this, it would be good to know. Anastasius, not calling you by name, but already called you by name. Would you be interested on that as well?
Yeah. So it's definitely a good thing to check and to dig into.
I don't know, Zvonko he's unfortunately ill, so isn't able to join the PTG, it looks like, today, but he has certainly expressed interest in having some real and useful performance tests. So he would probably be another person.
I will sync with him. So what I'm gonna do is, if everyone is okay with that, I'm gonna create a Slack channel, calling, I don't know, performance or something like that, and then like we can see what is the best way to build this up from the ground. Of course, I will not be doing this alone. Cameron will not be doing this alone. But we will help as long as other members of the community also help with that. Sounds like a fair deal. And then just to finish, and then we just disable what we have for now. Like, it doesn't make sense to try to run those tests in the way they are.
Christoph, go ahead.
So I think that I agree with the sentiment that was expressed earlier that we would also like to document things in such a way that you can run them relatively easily as a workload that you simply deploy and it gives you some results and you can check, for instance, on your own platform, these kind of things. But I also believe it's important to decide what we really want out of these results. And notably, what is the focus in terms of what we call performance? To me, there is not a single task force here. It's one that is in charge of implementing whatever we decide. But we also need to think about, do we care about, who among the users and the customers cares more about density, who cares more about IO performance, who cares more about IO intensive benchmarks performing well, and who doesn't. Networking versus storage, this kind of thing. So there are a number of axes like this that we probably want to identify, because right now what we are testing, as far as I remember, is purely, I would say, overhead, CPU overhead, these kind of things. I'm not sure we are testing the rest much.
I agree. I totally agree. But then, like, that's the reason why I suggest we start the channel and start the conversation there, and then we see what is the best way to do. Because one thing that I'm afraid, Christoph, is, let's say we say here that we will have 16 different task forces to deal with one with the scalability, density, IOPS, high IOPS, and things like that. But like, do we all actually have contributors enough to do that? So let's see. Let's start from the basic. That is like creating a place where we can get together, see whether we have volunteers, and then like each volunteer will be focusing most likely on what their company is more interested on. And if we have common interests, like better, then we can collaborate better, and then we can decide what should be focused. But like everything will depend on the interests of the players and how many hands those players will be putting on to actually do the work. Does it make sense?
Yeah, but just to clarify what I meant, I did not mean 16 task forces, but only two. One that would essentially be from the AC and would be defining trying to gather data from users to see what matters and have a sort of a priority ranking of what we think really matters for the Kata community. And the other task force would be, okay, now that we know what we want to measure, we do that. To me, that's two different jobs. It's not the same people doing it.
Partially, I would say partially, because so from my side, for instance, I am very much aware in Cameron is as well on what we need on the Northland side. And then if folks want to sit and wait for the AC to try to reach customers and gather feedback and then guide into a direction, if this direction is not what we need inside North Flank, we will just go and do whatever we need to do downstream. Not because we want to, but because the community was too slow to actually get into a consensus or actually accept a contribution on that front. So what I am afraid here is if we get this too theoretical kind of approach, And in 1 year from now, we end up having the same discussion in the vPTG.
Yeah, I think if we are to sunset the current metrics test, then just from a basic regression point of view on releases, having some basic framework with some basic tests is the priority. I think a discussion on what the use case is and which performance I think is a really useful and a really good one. But I think we don't want to let perfect be the enemy of good. I think just having something which is better than we have now is a good start, and then we can continue to refine it. Okay, any more thoughts on this one? Are people happy with the actions out of that to have a performance task force Slack channel and disable the current metrics tests? I can take the action to disable them.
Can you add Cameron to the list here? I'm not committing to do this unless Cameron is committed as well. Cameron, are you in the meeting? Can you say yes?
Yes.
See, my guy, my guy.
I'm a bit concerned though, like if I mean all this is good, but I think a customer that like if we only provide um a way for customers to run their own performance test, I think we're assuming a fairly engaged customer already. Shouldn't we also do something for folks who just come by and aren't necessarily ready to set up an environment, install Kata and run their own tests?
But Pavel, I guess like sorry, I think it was a little bit confusing. What I'm proposing is we will have the tests, we'll be running the tests, we'll be exposing the results of the tests. Together with that, we also provide something that users can run on their own. It's not like one or the other. So we will be providing metrics and test cases which will be running on every single PR, which will help people to at least take a look at that and say like, hey, if I run Kata Containers as it's shipped, I will get this kind of performance. Does it answer your concern, or is it a little bit more than that?
No, I mean, yeah, probably. I guess. What I meant to say, I guess, was basically as a short summary. I think it would be good if we also provide some idea of performance to customers, basically at the first sight. So like a quick way, very rough. I do understand the concerns, about like providing benchmarks and then arguing with people or even among us if they are accurate enough. That's obvious. But just some idea for folks to understand how fast this could run, like very broadly. Also for us, if we want to um, make a decision about the future of the restaurant time based also on performance, we need to get some numbers, even if just relative. We don't have to call out precise memory usages or times to complete this or that operation. It should be, but we need to know that the restaurant time is just as slow as the go round time, or is twice as fast, or 5 times as fast. Just in relative terms.
Yeah, this is the goal. This is part of the goal.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, what maybe I didn't explain. What I'm trying to suggest with the ability for customers to get their own is I don't think we can get into a situation where we are exhaustive because we've got 4 hypervisors, got 2 different runtime flavors, we've got various different storage mediums. If you multiply them all out, we could end up with, I don't know, 30, 40 different combinations. I don't think it's practical for us to test them all upstream on every PR. So I think we can do some basic selection to give us an idea if there's a significant regression. It might be that we want to have some at release times, we run a wider set so we can say, look, this is how this example of the setups we've chosen have expanded, but I don't think we necessarily want to go, oh, here's every different variant that you can run it, and here's some concrete numbers for all of those, partly just because we don't have the machines for that. So, but yeah, I think we definitely want some we want to be able to publish something which gives an idea of the capabilities, and maybe that might be a more of a kind of use cases type thing where some of the downstream teams say, oh, this is our configuration that, or this is a selection we choose, and this is some impressive benchmarks and stuff like that might be of interest to downstream people. Finer.
Hi, folks. Just one comment. I think that it should be a goal of this working group or task force, as Fabiano prefers, have defined policies for when we detect regressions. For example, once we identify that a given commit degraded the performance, should we right away revert the change, or should we notify the owner? So I think we need to define policies and actions that we should be taking when we find the problems on the, regarding the performance. I'm assuming that we are not going to run the performance jobs for every PR. So we will
Yeah,
face this situation very often. Not very often, but we might run into this situation.
Viner, and this is a very good point, and this is where I would like you to be volunteered to help with this as well. You know, because you have a very good point. We have to decide what actions we take. Do we just bump numbers as we did before? If we do, hey, we get back to the same useless state where we were. So I need your brain to help me to help us to define those. So if someone can add Viner as a volunteer there as well, I will be very happy to work with him. Mostly now that his football team just got kicked and might end up winning the state championship. But yeah, that's a different topic, right, Viner?
Yep, count on me.
Cool.
Lucas.
One thing I wanted to mention is that you're talking about two things, like performance testing and performance regression testing. In my eyes, performance regression testing is one thing that is really crucial, but the numbers are, I think it fits the current metrics results. Like they shouldn't be used for benchmarking, although they are frequently used for it, right? And performance, which is what Pavel talked about, right? To give the users some base understanding of what they can see. I don't think they compete much, but it should be pretty straightforward, like big fat warning that we are interested, at least from what I got, that we are interested in the regression testing, right?
we are interested on both. We have to understand how. Sorry. We have to fully understand how we are doing right now in order to start catching the regression, right? Partially, but yeah, the regression is the most important one, in my opinion, Lukash.
Thank you. In that case, you're not looking for the perfect scenario, but we are looking for a default, like use all the components we need scenario, and like kinds of scenarios, because the actual number isn't that important. It's important to use all the features that we want to test and we want to keep monitoring. And in case of regression, we do want to ideally investigate at least which part caused the regression. So I mean, I'm not really fond of CI in terms of performance. Therefore, I would maybe suggest to rather run weekly test, but have a script, a way to run it with parameters, so we can bisect later. And ideally with different components, like you can bisect over different, for example, different runtimes, or not the runtimes, but different versions of containerd, for example, etc.
I agree. Maybe this may not be the what we put in the CI, as in like we run on every pull request, but this is still part of some sort of CI if we run this, let's say, nightly or weekly, right?
Sure.
Yeah,
And in
just to
terms
be
of
sure.
in terms of performance, then I think it makes more sense to have it, I don't know, once a time, like before release, to have somebody who really knows what they are doing, trying to push the limits and find a setup that would work, and ideally contribute it to the list of params of the CI job, so we can run it with the same script, although not use it for the regression testing. Leave it for the users to say, yes, you can tweak it in this way, and we encourage you to test these because we found that they work well with our hardware, for example.
Do we know how to deal with the flakiness? Because I mean, the performance testing that we had in the past was basically a regression of the regression kind, and they were actually a lot of hassle. I guess because, as someone already mentioned, I think Steve, they were running on shared hardware, and the results were probably externally affected by other workloads, probably. And I think it was actually more hassle than it was worth.
Yes, I think we will need to run them on bare metal to try and limit that. But there's always going to be a range of fuzziness that we have to deal with, because it's not, yeah, in an ideal world, everything would be the same and you'd get the same number each time, but that's not where we live. So there'll be some sort of toleration, I expect.
Yep, I disagree with Steve, but
Sorry,
That's actually why I would suggest running nightly, for example, and use, for example, when it fails 5 out of 7 days or 3 out of 7 days, only then look at the results, because usually, especially if you run per pull request, then you get different time of a day, and based on my like some experiences with perf testing, different time of day means different temperature in even in AC conditioned rooms, etc., or different noisiness, which affects the overall outcome. That's why I preferred nightly jobs, which usually run at the same time period.
I mean, also it should probably be scheduled to the same hardware, because even if you specify and
Yeah.
make sure that the test has like 4 CPUs dedicated, it still matters how fast those CPUs are.
Pavel, this is totally right. So one of the things that I started saying was we didn't even know which was the base hardware that we had. It doesn't make sense to run performance and test on a Raspberry Pi and on, let's say, an Ampere machine and expect that we can have like reasonable numbers. Those should be run on the same hardware, yes. One thing that I do love the discussion, but I don't want us to get too much into the weed here on the details of this. It is because I really want us to have this discussion on how we can build this as part of this working group, because I think that will be easier to capture everything that we are talking here by the moment we agree on what we are doing, and then like follow up on that as part of this working group, if folks are fine about that. And by the way, if someone can add Lucas' name as part of the folks who are volunteering, because Lucas, and sorry for kind of volunteering you on this, but you have a lot of experience on this, and I really would love if you can take advantage of that as well.
I just wanted
Good.
to volunteer, so thanks.
Thanks, man. Like you have like a day, like 10 years or more of like doing this kind of work. So yeah, we can use your brain like quite a lot on this.
You're too kind, but I do have some experience, so yes, count me in.
Amazing, Lucas. Thanks.
I think this might be a good time to move on to the next topic in the interest of time, because we only have an hour and a little bit less than 15 minutes left, unless you all need anything else to be able to kick off the working group / task force. But it sounds like that we went into the implementation details here already. So it sounds like that the group already has a pretty good idea what needs to be done.
Yuduku, you are spot on. And yes, we can move to the next one. Thanks a lot for doing the segue to that.
Cool.
Okay, I think it will be Marcus with the Kata Coco interfaces, if that's still the next topic that we would like to discuss.
Yep, absolutely. So, yes, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe I say some, like, voice some of my thoughts, and then we can have a discussion about this. So the angle where I'm coming from is so there are actually two angles. One is that so I'm mostly viewing this from the perspective of a confidential Kata Containers user, like as opposed to a Coco user. So as you might know, we are using Kata downstream in confidential mode, but without the usual Coco additions, like without a KBS and so on. And what I'm thinking about a lot is, for one, the attack surface that we have inside the guest. And I think that there have been a couple of others who voiced it before. So if you just do a cargo tree on the source agent, this is actually quite a lot of dependencies already, and it gets even worse if you enable all features. And the other angle is, we have this, at least I see it as a weird dependency graph, where nominally Coco is a downstream user of Kata, but plenty of things, like for building a Kata image, for example, you actually need Coco components, or at least you need them for some functionality to work. Like, so I think 3 things come to mind easily, which is one is guest pull, where we consume a library for that. Another is the attestation agent, which I'm not sure if we are using it yet in. I think there is already a facility for starting the attestation agent in main, but we're actually intensifying the usage now that we're adding init data, because we are now, like, the attestation agent is now responsible for actually verifying the init data digest. And the third one is the confidential data hub, where I'm like, it's pretty much included in the agent. I'm not quite sure what functionality it covers. Nevertheless, so these 3 are all operated separately. So there's ImageRS is a library that is activated with a agent feature. The attestation agent is spawned by the agent, and the CDH is maybe or maybe not a running service inside the VM. And I was wondering whether we could move from these kind of ad hoc integrations to some sort of stable interface, which would also be open for others, like that is me, to implement. Of course, I can implement the TTRPC interface of the attestation agent, or sorry, the CDH. I'd rather not. So what I would find really useful is if things like the guest image pull or the attestation agent were just binaries in a well-known path, or maybe in a configurable path, that if they are there, then they are executed with a stable, like, I don't know, JSON on standard in, JSON on standard out, something like this. And if not, they're not. And what I would like to avoid is that we bake in hard dependencies on, for example, the attestation agent to verify the init data, which is a Kata concept. At least it's implemented both in the runtime in the agent. And it's a bit weird that then the attestation agent needs to be involved, and then if the attestation agent needs to be involved, I also need a KBS for that. So yeah, this is where I'm coming from and what I roughly have in mind. But I would like to hear others' thoughts on this. And I think another strawman goal could be to actually integrate Coco tighter into Kata.
Thanks. So I guess my initial thoughts checking out stuff. The attestation agent, the confidential data hub, and the API server REST, which is kind of the REST interface for the runtime workloads to communicate with the confidential data hub. They are currently launched as binaries based on some configuration, and if they are there via the agent, I have argued for quite a while that the Kata agent should not be responsible for process management. So we have talked about moving to a system D approach, and some of the work Fabiano did has kind of unlocked this, so that they are managed outside of the Kata agent, and the services are started or not started depending on some configuration. I think that might help, but I don't think that necessarily completely solves what you're asking. Because yeah, it's about that. I guess that APIs and how they are interacting with obviously when their processes. So there is, I'm not sure if I can find the link, but there is some discussion about moving the guest pool into and ImageRS in out of the agent as a crate and into the confidential data hub. So then it would all be driven via, I guess, TTRPC request. Again, that might help, but if we don't do a good job of defining those APIs, then, as you say, it makes it difficult for somebody to swap in and out. But with that model, we might be able to move away from the agent having so many crate dependencies. I don't know if any of those things you think would help or are orthogonal to the discussion.
I'm sorry that I missed the systemd aspect, which is really important, and I'm happy that we like have. I think we do have agreement on moving to systemd entirely, and the agent not being in the business of managing processes. This is totally the right approach that I want to support, like to the fullest extent. And moving things out of library dependencies and into services is, I think that this is helpful. It's maybe not the most convenient for me, but this is also not about me exclusively, at least. This would already help, but as you said, we should then think about like what exactly should these services be that are maybe also like not only useful for like the Cocoa project proper, but could also be implemented differently. So I think we also had a couple of disagreements on like the right approach to do things in the Cocoa space. And if the Kata agent was kind of agnostic to how this like how the higher levels of confidential cloud native computing look like, then this could be implemented differently or like every downstream project or user could implement their variant of AA or CDH, sorry, to their needs. So I think that might help, yes.
If I understood correctly, you want to have somehow a layer or new layer abstraction between the agent and Cocoa components so that you could basically replace the gas components AA from the Kata Containers upstream project to use your own implementation. Did I get correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
So for some things, so one example that right now comes to mind is there was a big discussion whether attestation should be done or can be done from containers, or whether attestation should always be done from the guest VM host side, you know, the intermediate thing. And there are situations where it's dangerous actually to let containers attest themselves because like I think this boils down to policies not being used. But there are also situations where it's perfectly useful, and like our setup and Microsoft setup come to mind. And instead of forcing the agent, like the Kata agent, to implement all possible combinations, it could just implement none of them and leave that to some component running inside the guest VM. This is not a like fully fledged proposal, but rather a thought.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I think there's definitely we've loosely had discussions where there in the past there is differences on when and where attestation is done. So like you say, we used to say, oh, we'll do attestation all up front. I know quite a long time ago when we were discussing it, Microsoft's view was let's just do the attestation when we need to release the something a secret, when we need to get a secret at that point. So yeah, we thought about, or well, I have considered, I don't know, I'm sure there have been discussions about different points where attestation can be done, and we would want to have it done flexibly so that this could be decided, because we're not going to think so effectively you can kind of just do attestation at any point, and I guess with a kind of generic service that could just be called out and different implementations could do it. So I don't know how much and how recently that's been discussed in the Cocoa community. I can't necessarily recall recent ones, but I definitely don't see all of the issues. But I think in general, I think the idea makes a lot of sense, and I think having a way which Fabiano has started a little bit with the updating the default guest pull feature, but having a way to kind of have, I guess, a non-confidential Kata agent which has got a lighter weight and lower surface area also makes sense and comes into this conversation. It feels like for better or for worse, ImageRS in particular pulls in a heck of a lot of crates in its dependency chain. So and obviously there are binaries that are installed for guest components, CDH, API server REST. Yeah, the attestation agent. If you don't need to do anything confidential, then having the flexibility to mean that those services aren't started in a nicer way, which we can do with systemd, definitely makes sense. I think getting the design right is probably the big challenge here, but I think the principle definitely makes sense from my side of things. Fabiano, I think you mentioned that you had a vested interest in this one. Is that kind
Yeah,
of on the non-confidential side of things?
exactly. Like, so what the main reason why I started here is because Marcus and you two have been covering exactly what I would like to see. From a person who will be using Kata containers without confidential containers at this point, I want to declutter the agent. I want to have the agent only doing what the agent should do for Kata containers. I don't care about confidential containers at this point. And then like I understand the fact that we don't have capacity to build the agent with all different combinations and yada yada. But from my point of view, at least allow me to build a minimal agent without having to pull in a minimal agent, a minimal guest component. Sorry, not guest, minimal guest rootfs in a way that it does not or will not have to bring in those components that I don't care about, because that's just like memory being wasted on for anyone who is not using Cocoa. Make sense?
Yep.
And of course, this goes very well with the proposal for Marcus, and then also like what you guys talked. So that's the reason I'm being silent, just agreeing.
Yep. I'll see if I can find the CDH switch proposal. If I can't, I'll add it retrospectively into the links. I think it's this one. yeah, so this is the current architecture where the agent includes ImageRS and it does some TTRPC to the confidential data hub to get policies, decrypt image, etc. Ding's proposal is then that under this kind of new world, ImageRS would be inside of the confidential data hub, and there would be some image pull API on it. So if that image pull API, this is a big if, was done properly, then that might satisfy some of your wish lists, I think, Marcus, particularly on image pool, and you could see there might be other APIs and stuff like that. Unfortunately, this hasn't necessarily moved forward. I think when we discussed it, well, over a year ago now, the kind of decision was that, or the thoughts was that there was a prereq on init data for this, and it looks like Ding has mentioned it in the init data discussion. Whether that's true or whether it's we can, I don't know if we want to slow down the init data or rethink, but yeah, it feels like this is, I guess init data was a prereq on this because in order to configure the confidential data hub in a secure way, we were going to use init data to create the cdh.toml file.
Yeah, that makes sense, because like if you have the configuration capabilities of init data, then many things get much easier. There's like, and now I remember that there's this dependency. So if you have if you only get init data at runtime and or not directly after boot, but only after the agent established connection somewhere, or at least the agent started, then you can only start services that depend on init data afterwards, right? Yeah. But this is more or less the thing that I had in mind. And one other part is like this could so we have image pull right here, but what I also had in mind is, so there are a couple of volume block device storage specific things that also involve CDH or could involve CDH, like the ephemeral volume that so I think there's an open pull request for adding encrypted ephemeral volumes.
Yep.
And this sort of things could be like nicely located in something that is not the agent. Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's where, from my perspective, which I argued for a long time without much success, but I think we hopefully do have agreement, is that's where systemd can come in and help. And if we can lay the init data configuration down potentially before Kata agent, and maybe I'm very biased because that's how we do it in peer-pods. We have something which is dedicated to laying out that init data, and then systemd services that depend on it go and start up confidential data hub, etc. Then that means you can get the configuration in, and I'm hoping, and I think the design of init data is that it should be flexible. So just because one implementation might lay out configuration to cdh.toml, you can provide different file names. So if you want to have, for want of a better word, Marcus's image puller, then you could have a mip.toml or something like that, which was laid out. And as long as we get this interface in, or the block volume decryptor, etc., whatever we wanted, then hopefully that should work. So yeah, I think we've got some reasonable steps. We just probably need to work out how we can sync with the Cocoa community to get us in the right direction and actually think about these APIs and the order of things. Because yeah, obviously this is the Kata Containers vPTG, and there's, well, I guess some of us have got to quite a few of us have got more than one hat because we are part of the Cocoa community as well. But I don't know if there's anyone who is a steering committee member or something like that, or who can take it over to the Cocoa steering committee as a proposal. So we kind of try and get this lined up because it feels like with init data and potentially this flip, it's a good opportunity to make some of these improvements.
Sorry for the the very naive question, but what is the status of init data, by the way?
Almost merged.
Seriously? Oh, that's like fast. Well,
Like they needed to do some rewrites because we switched. So we actually switched the file system approach like 2 times. But it's actually quite close, I would say.
oh, that's good.
And if you want to catch up on it, there's only 141 comments to read.
I trust you guys. Marcus, one thing that like would you then like be able to be the person who, because I know that for instance Magnus, who is not here, like would be quite interested in having this this interface and have everything working with systemd sooner than later. I would be interested, but like I don't have my Cocoa hat on anymore. So the only thing that I can do from my side is like block the nonsense to get into the Kata container side. But would you be able to actually like start that discussion with Magnus and others who are interested on that and actually get this as part of their plans?
Yes, I think so. So we can actually add it to the agenda or to the like pre-agenda items for the next Cocoa community call. To just raise awareness of like that like we are having this discussion here. And I'm also up to like writing some of the proposals and current like so we have standing proposals, we have a few like moderate new proposals. I can also write these up and try to make sense or try to figure out whether this makes sense for everybody or not.
That would be amazing. Like my personal experience would suggest you to open a PR together with the proposal. Otherwise, we will be, going back and forth in the proposal for till we find perfection, and then like someone else will get slightly irritated and just open a PR, and then we will accept what is not perfect. So if you can just come with the PR, or at least like a prototype on what you do, what you are trying to achieve, that would be amazing. And then like I would be very, very happy to start reviewing that.
I think the PR that I have in mind, funnily, would also depend on init data.
Okay.
But what I would do, like right now, init data is implemented as like part of the main agent, and I think like I'm fine with the implementation as is. It does its job, and I could use it with only a like little patching. But the PR that I have in mind right now is actually doing the thing that Steve just mentioned from peer pods, is actually reading the init data and parsing it and so on in a separate process that can then be the trigger for other systemd units that then are prerequisites for the agent proper to start. And once we are there, the argument of like I don't have configuration for starting services should be pretty much gone. And then we can talk about like actually putting many things into services.
Makes sense. And thanks a lot for bringing the topic and also for taking it back to the Cocoa part. Appreciate a lot, man.
Yeah, and it sounds like Magnus is certainly around the systemd stuff. Magnus is probably a really good person to chat to because he's thought about that quite a lot and been involved in the peer pod side of things. So he would probably be a good person to review or chat over that, or maybe even help. with some implementation. Okay. Any other thoughts or comments on this topic? So I guess our kind of next steps, we've got, well, we need to get init data in probably anyway, then start working on the systemd switch with a process user data type service and some follow-on dependent services, and then try and get some agreement on APIs and look at switching this to like a TTP RPC driven or whatever we choose approach for that. Cool. All right, awesome and great, and thank you for bring this up, Marcus. I think, as you can tell, there's a bunch of stuff that's floated around that we have talked about in the past of these, but some of the loose threads have stayed loose. So yeah, trying to get the right time to bring them together and package them up nicely makes a lot of sense. Okay, are we ready to talk about installation options now? Okay, so I raised the original one, and then Anastasios added suggestions based on, I guess, variants of ARM. So this was, we've seen a few, I've seen a few questions in, I think some of them are in here, yeah, in the discussions about what's the install path for Debian-based systems. There's been a bunch of PRs raised against Kata Manager, and when which my personal view, which maybe is not shared by the AC or the community, is that it is somewhat deprecated. I don't think anyone is maintaining Kata Manager, but when we've said to people, people have gone, oh, Kata Manager's out of date, can we update it? And you've kind of gone, oh, well, it's sort of not really our primary concern. Our primary aim is around Kata deploy and a Helm-based approach on Kubernetes clusters, at least. And they've gone, oh, well, the documentation sort of, some people go, oh, well, automatic Kata Manager is the automatic, so that's the best one approach. So, and then we've got like different installation guides for if you're using the Rust runtime. And I think in general, this guide is pretty out of date, or is not being updated very recently. There was then a discussion recently on an AC, I can't remember who raised it, about, oh, can we add snap support, which we had, and was ditched because nobody was keeping it up to date. And then I think Anastasios was talking about, we saw some questions in about some specific variants of ARM and what is supported, how you install and stuff there. So there's a whole bunch of topics around that. I guess Anastasios, please add what you wanted to as context in here.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So the initial thing, since you mentioned Snap, I was the one that raised that. So I recently tried out micro-K-tests, and I saw that we used to have a Snap. It used to be really easy to install Kata in micro-K-tests, like enable Kata, and it worked. And I was thinking that maybe it's another tool that people can try out Kata locally on their own, on a VM or somewhere, and they can check whether it fits their needs. So it's something like more exposure for the project. I'm not sure if people are using Snap. I guess they do. Canonical supports that a lot, but I'm not using it, so I'm not really aware what's going on. Regardless, I think that maintaining such a package solution is not that much of a burden, and we can take it on and try to revive it and maintain it if that's okay with you guys. That's the first thing. So the rationale for that is to be able to install Kata in canonical distros in Ubuntu easily, and to add that to MicroKTest, which adding a snap package is as easy as enable MicroKTest enable Kata. So the other thing I wanted to raise is based on a couple of questions by people about how to run Kata on a Jetson machine. So these machines are NVIDIA edge machines, let's say. They're mostly used in computer vision use cases because they feature a GPU. They have eight ARM cores, and they come with 32 gigs of RAM or 64 gigs of RAM, something like that. And so they are they're not Raspberry Pis, they're stronger. But the issue there is that they come with their own kernel, as NVIDIA is Zvonko around. I can he's not his.
He is not. You can just like be totally sincere about.
No, I wanted to tease him. So NVIDIA is notorious for not abiding by the spec. So they ship these boards with a custom kernel and the custom config for the kernel. So they're missing things like device mapper, like theme provisioning, like VSOC support, like stuff that is really common in a container environment, let's say. So for this specific case, VSOC and XRM, XFRM, something like that, something related to netlink and netfilter was missing. So we found out the missing parts and we compiled the kernel, and the user is happy that they can run Kata on Jetson. So I was thinking that since we are doing this work and we run Kata on Jetsons, maybe it would be useful for other people as well. So we should write up something as part of the documentation. If you want to run Kata on these machines, then follow this guide. And the final topic about the installation, I'll go through all of the topics, and we can chat afterwards. Is that there was this how-to from an Amazon person on how to add Kata in a managed Kubernetes environment, and I think we can include that as part of the documentation of the project, because it seems like people are using the managed environments, and it doesn't hurt helping people trying to figure out the corner cases. I mean, since we do have, I think we do have something like how to run on AWS. It's a step forward to do how to run on a managed Kubernetes control plane. It should be as easy as deploy the control plane, choose a proper clear CNI, and do a kata deploy. I mean, we've tried it. It's that easy, but we can add corner cases, how to debug, how to add. I mean, a doc is always useful in terms of that.
Do you mind if I go on the opposite order, replying to some of those?
Sure. Yeah.
So one of the issues that I always had on adding instructions on those cloud providers and things like that is we just don't have access, right? So if you happen to have access and are willing to get that to work, amazing. So far in the companies that I have worked for, I didn't have access to those, and then like there is no incentive in the community to actually get that kind of thing. So the developers and maintainers can actually play with that. So if you have the resources to do that, please go ahead. I think this is quite important on the AKS thing. On the Jetson thing, man, like I love Zvonko, but man, like those kernels from Jetsons are a pain. Are like man. I had like issues with the previous one. You are running the Irving right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like our builder for the iron builds for a long time end up being a Jetson NX Xavier, right? So those machines are very good, but then like you have to work this around a lot. So I truly appreciate if you could put something together there, man. Like that's like, and a lot of people can benefit from that. And maybe we can even get Zonko to do some either validation or at least like sharing this documentation within NVIDIA and NVIDIA channels as well, because that is important. Those like are the most affordable ARM machines, powerful ARM machines that someone can get. And then like on the last topic, that is the support for Snap, or support for not for Snap, but for any kind of packaging, right? It's a pain. If you guys think that you can just revive the Snap, there is no problem. I think that's also welcome. I saw some folks trying to run Kata Containers with micro Kubernetes as well. That's the one that you mentioned, right? The one from Canonical. And what we end up doing was adding support to Kata Deploy. So Kata Deploy can actually now be used with micro Kubernetes as well. But yeah, if it's on Snap, it's easier. Just keep in mind, this may be a not so easy task to maintain. If you guys are up to maintaining that, kudos, and go for it.
So you think that it's better if we, I mean, if we can run Kata deploy on micro-KTest and it's as easy as the other ones?
It is. It
Okay.
is.
Okay.
So because this is the thing, let me just Steve, are you the one who is sharing the screen?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, can you just go to GitHub, .github, sorry. Then we have a workflow, and then we may have some Kata deploy workflow.
So they run Kata deploy tests.
Yeah, something like that. On GARM, no, on AKS, maybe. Is that it? No.
There was a micro-KTest that Steve highlighted before.
Yeah, that one yeah, exactly. So yeah, the only thing that you have to do when you are using the Helm chart is setting Kubernetes to micro Kubernetes, and that will do everything else for you.
Awesome. Okay. Okay. We'll take a look at that as well.
We added that as part of the last release, Anastasius, because someone was explicitly having problems with this. And then when we asked the person, like, can you raise a patch? And the person was like, of course. And then like the patch came in, it was really good.
Okay. I was thinking that patching the container deconfig for micro-KTest and persisting it would be a pain. But okay, I can take a look at the code. We can iterate over that.
That's a good point about persisting. I didn't reboot my node when I was testing. So that's like a reasonable task to do, just like to have this tested in this way as well, to do the reboot and see like whether this persists or not. But yeah, this was added and should be like very easy to use.
Perfect.
But still, if you want to add Kata Containers to Snap, I like up to you, but that like the maintenance takes some time.
Yeah, that was why, as the AC, we chose to remove it, just because there was no one who was maintaining it, and we got to the point where the version in Snap was like 18 plus months old. So we just had to basically get rid of it on the dock, because no one was willing / able to update it. So there's no point documenting a path which is so out of date.
Okay.
And I guess it feels from my point of view that Kata deploy is by far the installation path that has the most CI testing and the most attention. So if we can push more scenarios towards Kata deploy, it feels like that makes sense to me. But I appreciate doesn't necessarily always work. And I guess there are maybe we've become too Kubernetes focused as a community. It does seem to be what most people are using, but there's obviously space for other installation setups. So I don't know if that helps, Anastasios, with...
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so it sounds
Okay.
like we might want to, again, the AWS installation guide is 2 years old. We don't have necessarily, I certainly don't have access to most of these systems to install, but if you do, and we've got some documentation, then it seems like either having an EKS version of this or some extra section on this makes a lot of sense. I don't know how much we are driving people to these articles, which might just be because, yeah, we've got 2 years old, 2 years old, 4 years old, 4 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. So there's obviously not a huge amount of review of these. So that's where the challenge comes. And if people come in and say, oh, these don't work anymore, if we don't have the maintainers, that's where we're more likely to pull the plug and say users can kind of on their own if we don't have the access or maintainers. But
So I pasted in the chat the link that to the tutorial I was referring to.
cool.
And it seems that this should be somehow, I think this should be included in the official docs. Because it's Kata, it's on Nikkei, yes, okay, but
Yep. Yep, I think that makes sense. And I don't know if anyone has, I don't know, Ilko, if we have any communications with the kind of AWS team who are looking after it, but it might be worth.
Actually, no. We have a couple. We have some credits, a few credits in AWS, and we have been testing our own stack. So as part of that, we have been testing Kata as well. So we have a document that describes how to do that. And while looking around for documentation, we only found this one. That's why I mentioned that. And
Yeah.
the same stance, I mean, for Azure, the same stance for that. We applied to get some credits, and there's this mess with the Microsoft accounts, the Teams accounts, and all these complicated stuff, and we weren't able to use them. So if we were able to use them, we would have a document for Azure managed control planes as well.
Yeah, so and I think the point I was going to make is if we do have some contact with the AWS team, then it might be, obviously, if you've got documentation, that'd be great to share it, but it might be worth letting them know and say, look, we're kind of pointing to your docs from our space. They might have an interest, and then if they do write any more updates or anything like that, they might be more likely to contribute them back.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So it might be helpful, because I guess this has got a bit of how to on it, and then it's the actual install, which I don't know if they are using Kata Deploy or anything like that.
Yes, they do. They use Kata Deploy and Firecracker, and they use the dev mapper scripts from from our docs.
Yep.
So it's from Docker essentially. But,
Yep.
I was only in contact with the account team. So they put me in contact with one of the customers who had challenges with Kata and were asking questions and giving some feedback. So it's not necessarily the part of AWS who would do contributions.
Okay.
So I don't have that level of contact. But I need to dig up my notes. I don't have them handy. I apologize. I should have dug them up before the PTG session. But I remember people giving some complaints about installation options. I think some of them maybe not relying that heavily on Kubernetes or would favor to have the operating system packages again, something that they can roll out updates easier and do configurations on large distributed systems easier. So when it comes to installation, it seemed like not everyone wants to be fully coupled with Kubernetes, but I don't have my notes, and the conversation was a little while ago, so I only have fragments of what they told me.
One thing that is interesting to me is Kata Containers is tailored to be used with Kubernetes. If folks don't want to be tied to Kubernetes, I just wonder what kind of like very, very toyish environment they have to use Kata Containers. That would be nice to understand as well, because there is no serious maintainer tool that supports Kata Containers apart to run like outside of Kubernetes.
Well, interestingly enough, most of the requests in the Slack are actually for the Docker runtime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which might be because that's the one that's most broken, and everyone's using Kata Deploy. But yeah, you're definitely right, Marcus. There are a lot of questions about, oh, how do I use Kata with Docker? So maybe that's some gap. But yeah, I guess it depends if any of the maintainers in Kata are actually doing that themselves. I think we have some tests for that.
We do have tests for Docker, for nerdctl, for CTR, I think. But I just find it like very, very hard to manage and scale something on using Docker, for instance, right? If you're using Docker, most likely you are playing with containers on your personal computer, and you know what I mean. Like it's very hard to see this scaling in company-wise kind of infrastructure.
And like some of these guides, probably Viner's the only person who's still running Fedora 34. So
Wait. This is minimum version. This is minimum version. It doesn't mean like this is supported on that version. Although Viner is most likely on 34.
Don't force me to update my system, please.
that's why we've got to keep it at 34 minimum version.
Yeah. The problem with the Fedora packages is that Red Hat isn't really investing time in them. I think the last person who worked on them resigned from Red Hat, and latest available RPM was for Kata 3.12. For CentOS, it's minimum and maximum versions.
Yeah.
And the instructions are broken because the site myro.centos.org is decommissioned since a long time. So yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if we
Yeah.
if we should go and remove these. I guess that means we no longer have any official packages. So our recommended for most users might need to change if we don't have any official.
Yeah.
But Steve, why not just point into Kata deploy? Even the Kata deploy guide is outdated right now. Zvonko has been saying that he would get some time to update that thing to use the Helm. Because right now we are just pointing to the customization files, but with the Helm one, like that would be like very, very well easier to play with. And like we should be good. We should be good to just go ahead and use this. This is what has been used as part of the CI. This is where we are testing installation, things like that. And then like Kata container installation guide should just point to Kata deploy one, and that's it.
Yeah, I think that's what I would like to see because Kata manager, if we've got a load of official packages which aren't maintained, Kata manager I don't think is maintained really.
It was written by James. I have contributed there in order to satisfy some enterprise willingness to keep this. But essentially speaking, like just point people to the Helm chart. Like if they are not using Kubernetes, sorry about that. Then like we can figure out what to do. But Kata container is tailored for Kubernetes, so we focus on Kubernetes.
So I guess
So for maybe new users or users just exploring Kata, how much effort it would be to actually enable Kata under Podman properly?
Not going to happen. So Podman doesn't support Container Edition v2. So we would have to have support on Podman for Container Edition v2. I think that Podman's maintainers preference for VM isolation is using libkrun instead of Kata containers. So I don't think there is much to do there. As far as I remember, like 5 years ago or so, Christoph started this saga of trying to get Kata containers into Podman, but I think that he hit the either the same or very similar roadblocks than the ones that I mentioned here. Christoph, do you remember what was the main blocker there?
I heard you, but I did not understand what you were referring to.
Getting Kata containers running with Podman.
With Podman. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I've tried a number of things there. And the only one that was successful was one that the community rejected because it meant restoring the old command line interfaces in Kata and all the state management and serialization, etc., that went with it. And then I tried to have that in an independent process. And I spent maybe 3-4 months trying to get that to work, and ran into one issue after another, and so it essentially went nowhere. Some of the issues, for instance, were trying to get Podman itself to not that there are a number of hard-coded paths inside Podman itself, because it works without a daemon, and it doesn't really go over an API. It just calls some binaries directly, including conmon and so, etc. So either you have to fake conmon or you have to patch Podman to know that there are other options than Podman to connect and so on. And in our case, we just could not use conmon because there is no longer any old style shame. So in the short version is I could not make it work without patching Podman.
Just
Boom.
grabbing the mic for my chat question, but I always thought that run K, so I never looked into the run K subtree, but I always thought this was what I would want to use with Podman if it's an OCI runtime.
So run K is interesting because run K does not start a VM for you. Right? This is
It
run
doesn't?
K.
Okay.
No. What run K does is it uses a lot of the same methods that were used on the agent side, and it just reuses that, so it avoids duplication on that part, but it does not actually create a VM for you. It's just like run C rewritten in Rust using Kata agent stuff.
But so
Yeah.
where would you use run K then?
If you want a run C kind of thing rewritten in Rust using the same agent methods, I guess.
There is also libk run, so maybe that's what Marcus was thinking about.
No, I was
Mm,
talking about the Kata run K.
Okay.
But
yeah.
it contributes to the confusion now that we have run C and C run and run K and K run, yes.
Oh yeah, we are very good at that. At some point, we're gonna have like maybe it's called Kata K, Kata C, and then Kata Go and things like that at some point. Folks, just to let you know, like I have to drop. Thanks a lot for the conversations. Appreciate a lot, and see you all on Thursday. Take care.
Cheers. Okay, cool. So I guess my suggestions of the actions we take from this is we prod Zonko to finish the Helm documentation. We kind of replace most of this page with a pointer to that, the kind of package, the installation methods. Maybe we say to install on Kubernetes, we do this, and maybe if we want to support Docker, we could have a different approach. And then for the specific, I guess, CSPs or devices, i.e. Jetson, we have a look through them and decide, are they outdated? Should we just remove them? Or if we've got new updates like Anastasios has got for EKS, then let's integrate them and make sure they show up on the list. Does that sound a reasonable way forward?
Yeah.
I guess a question we want to understand maybe is Kata Manager. It sounds like some people were using it. but that's something for a potential lean and mean discussion of do we want to, what's our position on it? If we're not updating it, should we, I guess at least we could mark in the README that it's deprecated and we suggest using Kata deploy instead, and maybe in 4.0 we would delete it. I'm not sure. Or maybe we'll get some people who come back out and say, no, we love Kata Manager and we want to maintain it, which also could work. Okay.
This could be a good example for the deprecation process when we get to it.
Yes. Yes, definitely. I don't think we're going to get to it today. So
Yeah, we
I'm
only
not
have
sure.
10 minutes left.
I guess we could
Yeah,
just.
so
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I think it could be beneficial to move it to Thursday so that it's close to the lean and mean,
Yep.
because I think they're closely related.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, we can spend 10 minutes on CI/CD if it's enough for you.
Yeah, I think we can probably talk about Gatekeeper at least in that time. So I guess a good place to start is, so I'll start with PR. So Lukasz can probably correct me, but he wrote a tool called Gatekeeper. The idea behind it is that rather we have a lot of jobs. I think we used to have, I don't know if it's still the case, but like 340-ish jobs running as a result of the CI. Sometimes if you're making lots of changes, this is useful to run them all. Other times it doesn't make sense. If you're making a minor doc update, you don't want to run all of the CI tests. So the idea behind Gatekeeper is that it would manage which tests were run via its kind of skipper mechanism. And as a result of this, it would also provide some notion of conditional required flag. At the moment, we have required checks. So I think I've got a PR open so we can have a look at it. If you've got a PR which just updates the required tests, for example, in this case, a bit circular, you don't need to rerun everything. So Gatekeeper won't trigger everything to run necessarily. And at the moment, that means we still just have a whole load of required for all the CI. So you have to use admin rights to merge. So the plan going forward is Gatekeeper has its own kind of version of what we should be using. I think we might want to update the OCase test always being required, but that we can check on that. But I've kind of proposed that we try and switch towards using Gatekeeper as our primary driver of tests, with an idea that once we are happy that it works for everybody, Gatekeeper would be marked as required and nothing else would. So thereby we've effectively kind of got that conditional required state. That does mean we need to make sure that the rules are updated. Oh, this is just a doc update. It wasn't actually the one I was going to mention. Unfortunately, this would be working with Gatekeeper, but I've got another PR which updates the rules for skipping things if you've got a doc only change, which so if this PR was merged, which has been waiting for review, then that last PR I showed you would have been a good example. So apologies about that. But yeah, the idea is that we work on some rules for the required tests and make sure we're only running kind of subsets at a time. And if we can shift to that as our primary way, then that should make our CI run quicker because we don't waste as much time running all the tests when we don't need to. Lukasz, is that a fair representation of Gatekeeper?
Yes, more or less. Like the main idea was to basically not to force us to run CI jobs that are not really required because they don't make sense for that kind of pull request. Because if you're changing something that's not touching the code that is being tested, it doesn't make sense to wait for the required tests to finish. We have nightly jobs for like checking whether things broke because of some dependencies. And second thing which is good about Gatekeeper is that instead of changing the requirement files in GitHub somewhere hidden behind logging, etc., you should have all those tests listed in a file in a Git repository where you can like see how it evolves. I mean, if we need to get rid of one required test, we can send a pull request and publicly discuss why we actually are removing it and have a history. It was removed because of something.
Yeah, and that's actually what the PR that I updated here was something we decided to do on the AC meeting is make when you want to make a job required, it's the mechanism for doing that is to update the required test.yaml so that we start using that and having that kind of auditability and transparency. So I guess for PTG, the kind of aim is, or the reason I brought the discussion, and we don't have a massive amount of time, is I'd like to see us working towards using Gatekeeper in the kind of the next 6 months before the vPTG, and that I think it's probably mostly a visibility thing to get people into the habit of checking the Gatekeeper job. We do definitely need to update some rules. I think I've got 2 PRs out which are doing rule updates, one of which I showed you. So getting some help merging those will be useful, but I think it's then starting to say when we're doing PRs, having a look at Gatekeeper and going, does it make sense? If Gatekeeper is red and we're going to hit merge, we might want to think what's going wrong here. Or if Gatekeeper's green but we don't think enough testing has been done, again, having that discussion and refining these rules with a view that we can then, once we have got people used to using it and we're happier that it is more successful, we can switch to using this as the single source of the requirements for jobs. So I guess it's more of maybe a proposal, but I'd be interested in what people think. I don't know if many people look at Gatekeeper. I try and look at it partly because I'm probably one of the people that's more likely to merge things with admin rights if they're like a workflow only test or something like that. So we have to test them in a different way. Then that's the time that I might go, oh, what does Gatekeeper say? Gatekeeper's green. That gives me a bit more happiness that the checks that we should have done have been done. But yeah, I guess, does that sound reasonable as an approach that we start working for in the next vPTG period?
Maybe one thing to add to the safe test or security aspect. The only thing Gatekeeper does is it queries the API and checks whether those tests are passed or not, or are still running.
Yep.
It doesn't making up those numbers, and it tries to provide some sensible output, but it's very bad at this point. I mean, I just put some, those tests passed, those tests failed. Although it's probably more readable than the pure GitHub, but still, it's very simple. But it can be improved. We can put links to there, for example, for the file jobs, etc. So that this can be improved in the future. What can't is one thing that I don't think should be replaced is we should still require not just the gatekeeper, but some very basic tests should be required on GitHub side. But gatekeeper should be for the variable tests, like the tests that are likely not to be run for all PRs.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, like I say, I think it's just about visibility. I think we can make, and we definitely will need to make enhancements. But if we start using it, that's the best way we're going to work out what the enhancements should be and drive those. So I guess we're out of time. If anyone's got any thoughts on Gatekeeper, then that would be great. That's my suggestion is we start trying to use it a lot more. It's been in for quite a while now, so trying to refine it and move towards that end usage. There's a lot of benefits it can get us from speed of CI/CD and stuff like that. Okay. I guess we are at time. So again, thank you everyone for joining. It was a really great session. I think we've had some really, well, I found them really interesting discussions. Hopefully other people have got some value of them for them. It does feel somewhat inevitable that we are not going to get through all of the content we have left on Thursday. So it might be that we need to hang some of the topics over to an AC meeting in the future. But I guess it's a good thing that we've got too many things to talk about rather than no topics.
Agreed. I will try to keep an eye on things to follow up and make sure that we add them to the AC agendas if we don't get to cover everything. And I posted the recording for yesterday's session in the Etherpad already, and I will post this one as well once it becomes available, so people can also catch up on what we talked about. I was a little better at taking notes at the beginning than at the end, but the recording will be available as well.
Yeah, I've taken some notes when I wasn't speaking, so I can try and add a few things in as well.
Yeah, so some of the things are just beyond my expertise, so it's harder to note things down efficiently. So always appreciate the help.
Okay.
Okay, and see you all on Thursday in the regular AC meeting slot.
Yep. Cheers, folks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Thanks everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.